The following is a presentation of the Control Trends Podcasting Network.
Welcome to Controltalk Now, your smart buildings podcast with Ken Smyers and Eric Stromquist. Controltalk Now, your source for control news you can use. And now, here is Eric.
Hi, welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending October 13th, 2019. This is episode 334, where we talk about all things HVAC and smart building controls. I am joined by your host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, as my wife likes to call him now, secret agent man, Kenny Smyers. Kenny, welcome to the show. Big dog.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. It's always great to be here. 334. Oh, geez. That implies that we've been doing this for a long time.
We have been doing it for a long time. Yeah. And so I'm up in the mountains of North Georgia. This is the North Georgia Lake Rayburn studio. My wife had to go back to Atlanta, so I'm babysitting two little kids. I've bribed them to my best of my ability with promises of ice cream and cookies and toys if they'll just stay put and be quiet. So we'll see how that works out. But that being said, if you see some naked kids running across behind me, that's Abby and Axel, and they're going to do the best they can, and I'm going to do the best I can to remain calm.
That's good. Well, I tell you what, you got a beautiful background. It looks really pretty, and I can't wait to visit you down there. But we got a rainy day in Georgia here in Pittsburgh. It's raining. It's ugly. It's gray. It's fall.
Kind of like the Steelers, right?
Oh, geez, they're awful.
Well, same thing with the Falcons, man. The good news for me and you, buddy, is football is not a distraction for the two of us because both our teams are terrible this year, and we're moving on from there. And now the Braves have lost to the Cardinals, so moving on from that.
They get a good history. They get a good future. I think Braves will be in the run for the next couple of years.
They probably will. But Kenny, look, we got a fabulous guest lined up this week. But let's do a little housekeeping first. What do we got going on before we bring our guest on?
Well, we got three major things, but the first will be the ballots will be coming out and they'll be posted, so that we'll begin the nomination process for the 2019 Control Trends Awards. So please look forward, look for your emails and look so that you can participate. Remember, you're going to enter who you want to nominate for each category. Yeah, you can nominate up to three.
Up to three, yeah. So the way that works again is we have the nomination period, and during that period, which will end probably, Kenny, around the first part of December or so, we'll take the top 5 or 6 from each category. Those will be the finalists, and then there'll be a finalist voting ballot that goes out that you'll vote for. You can actually take this ballot that we're going to send out, and to Kenny's point, there'll be names already in there, people that have already been nominated, but there's a thing called Other. So with Other, if you don't see the person, product, or company you want to have nominated, you just basically type that name in. If you get 2 nomination votes, then you officially go on the ballot. Okay, so it takes 2, but you can copy the link to that nomination ballot. You can send it out to your community. You do have to use your email address. Kenny and my assurances are that we will not share your email address with anybody at all. But we basically just do that to make sure that the votes aren't bogus. And that'll be the same thing when you have to use your email address again when we go to the finalist ballot. But this is the way the process worked every single year. And then in Super Bowl Sunday in Orlando at BB King's Supper Club, you will be privy to the winners of the Control Trends Awards. Plus, you also get to watch the Super Bowl with all your rowdy friends, as Hank Williams Jr. would say. So we're combining the Super Bowl with the Control Trends Awards. The Control Trends Awards will start an hour early to make sure we don't miss kickoff for the Super Bowl.
Wow, that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. Next up, we had congratulations and shout-out goes out to the innovation of the O3 Sensor Hub, which combines 7 different sensors to provide the most accurate view of interior space available.
Yeah, we talked about that on the show.
This is a great post for the building automation. We sure did. They won, but the Delta Controls won the Building Automation Award for the 2020 HR show, which is pretty big. That's a very prestigious award. Cool. So congratulations.
Yeah, well, Delta Controls, we got our guys there, John Nichols, and what's the guy's name who came on the show? He was an awesome guest, but he talked about that product on our show about a month ago.
Yeah, we had the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer, Robert Hemmerdinger, and he was really proud of the O3 Hub, and look, so good things happened. Yeah, super.
Yeah, congratulations to them, and they'll probably make the Control Trends nomination ballot, I'm guessing, Kenny, with that much stuff there. So cool. Well, congratulations to Delta on that.
And briefly, Eric, we'll just cover the Blemo Zip Economizer, airside economizing made easier. There's a upcoming webinar you need to register. It will be Wednesday, October 16th at 1 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. So please register. There's a hot button on the website. It'll take you right to the registration page.
Very, very cool. And listen, Kenny, just to mention real quick, we got 2 new categories this year, and you'll see on the voting ballot all the changes we made, but 2 that are kind of, I think, kind of cool. One is we're going to have the Distributor of the Year will be an award this year. So if you think about it, we're covering everything from the Consulting Engineer to the Systems Integrator of the Year to the Manufacturer of the Year, and now we got the Distributor of the Year because that's how Kenny and I get paid. So we're definitely going to tout the virtues of 2-step distribution. And Kenny and I have, we've accused ourselves, I think it's the right word, Kenny, Stromquist and Company DMS Controls Group will not be participating in that just due to conflict of interest because we're both so damn competitive. If we were actually in there, we would stuff the ballot box, but we're not. But we're not. So it's up for everybody else. So people like Cochrane Supply, John Donahue, Kelly, Nuco. I mean, there are a ton of people out there.
Jackson,
Jackson Control will probably get involved in that. And then the other category that I think is new this year is going to be really fantastic is the Valve Solution of the Year. Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, we're controlling valves, right? So many great companies from Bolimo with their energy valve to Siemens and Johnson with their PIC valves to all kinds of different valve solutions. So the Valve Solution of the Year will be another category we will have this year.
Yeah, it's great because let's face it, when it comes down to commercial components, the 2 most critical components are your actuators, right? To open, close dampers and modulate valves, and then valving. And they've made this so incredibly robust and so efficient, and they finally got the dynamics down so that, it came through that ball valve phase. And now, so this PIC V valve is really an interesting concept because it will make your whole building more energy efficient and more comfortable. So
very, very cool, Kenny Smyers. All right. What else do we have before we bring our guest on?
Well, that was it, Eric. Again, it was
wasn't there something from our friends at J2? Did they have something?
Well, Scott Mensch put a bunch of articles out. I mean, if you want to talk about that real quick, because he did a good job. Here,
So those of you who don't know, Scott Mensch is with J2 Innovation. We've known Scott for quite some time, formerly of Tritium with J2, and I guess J2 now is part of the Siemens family, right, Kenny?
They sure are. Division of Siemens. And, they're very excited about their Fin 5. The Fin 5 is now available, and so Scott came up with 2 very nice articles, and we're going to post them. One was involving the user interface and how if you don't have a good user interface, it makes it, the end user is very frustrated. They can't maximize the optimization of his building. In fact, he has trouble. So the criticality, and then also was the new features of Fin 5, where they're doing just exciting things. Are very it's a great article. We'll have the article on our website, but take a look at it. New things from J2 Innovations and Scott Mensch.
Very, very cool, Kenny Smyers. And listen, I think our next guest would approve of what Scott Mensch just said there. So how about introducing him?
Eric, I'd love to. We have the owner-editor of Automated Buildings, Ken St. Clair, is joining us on the show. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Welcome, Ken.
Thank you very much, guys. Always a pleasure to be on Control Trends.
Yeah. We usually have you at the first of the month, but I think we might have come up with a better idea because usually at the first of the month, we're reviewing the issue that's coming out. In this case, it would be the October issue. By having you in the middle of the month, kind of get the best of both worlds because we can review October and then we can also preview November. So let's start with October, Ken Sinclair. What was the theme and what was your big takeaway from the October issue?
Okay, the theme was building user connection in the smart city, and I've kind of done an industry crossover the floor a bit and started to pay attention to what's happening in the smart city and seeing how our buildings are kind of becoming part of that scene. And I think it's worthwhile because I think what I've unearthed is I kind of describe it as it's the city's a chessboard, and our buildings are just like pawns on the chessboard. And some of the stuff that's going on, I think you have to pay attention because you have the potential of the queen clobbering you, just taking you right out, because some of the stuff they're doing is so significant, and I think we have to follow some of the patterns of the smart city. So that's what I learned. Got some great articles. Actually, got some great response on social media, finding a whole bunch of new folks who are kind of interested in what we're doing. Chatting a bit to the autonomous car people. I think that's another play that we have to kind of watch is
Okay, hang on, Otto. Again, man, the fire hydrants opened up, man. You got all this stuff coming at us. We got to back up a minute because I want to get to the smart city. And Kenny, I know you're going to say smart city pity because you're from Germany and they fancy themselves being the smart country, right? But there is. So let's break down to the smart city a little bit, Ken. So what's the difference between a smart building and a smart city? I mean, some of them are obvious, but I'm sure they're all kinds of distinctions that we probably haven't thought of that you probably have.
Well, it's rapidly evolving. There's no doubt about that, and there's kind of a competition going on. I think the other thing that's fallen on the smart city is the climate emergency is being picked up and dealt with, I think, by the large cities much more so than governments. It just becomes too much of a political thing for anybody to move, whereas the cities seem to be able to kind of deal with that. But I'm not sure what's really different. It's just evolution. What is going on is there's a whole mobility revolution going on in the smart cities, and what's happening there is of course we've heard of the autonomous car and how that might change. We're seeing car sharing, we're seeing electric scooters. So the whole mobility piece of the smart city is real and happening, and they're starting to develop some standards. When we kind of look at some of the standards they're developing for mobility, I think our buildings kind of fit right into that. And we're kind of just turning in, all our buildings are kind of just turning into big data sources. So I think there's a play to, if we're going to be part of the smart city, I think we have to understand what the smart city, what each smart city is doing and how we can best play their, as I'm calling it, their chess game.
Well, I think it's fascinating, and it's happening now. The acceleration is discernible. You can feel the more people are getting involved. Like you said, the people from outside our industry are now taking a look at our industry and learning about it, and then have some curiosities regarding how we do things and why we do things. But the whole thing was that we're watching the definition of the protocols. Like some of the articles that you'd referenced in your contractor post. That you sent us recently showed that there was layers. The Department of Energy now has a serious initiative going on with their BEADS program to have a building energy protocol, and so that there's no reason why these things shouldn't interface, and data, like you're saying, that are being generated from these buildings. The energy data is so vital now to make the smart city possible. So all these little restrictions we have, all these little buffers that stop the flow of data are trying. It's like water coming down a hill. It's going to find its way around that impediment, and so all our protocols, BACnet, working our way through the building. And as Scott Cochran says, the APIs are really where it's at. Even the BACnet IP is good, but it's not adequate for the full Internet of Things inside of a building. So we're seeing a rush from inside the building to get the data out, and we're seeing a demand from the data being pulled by the Department of Energy in various high-level areas. So we're seeing this convergence happen. And it's an amazing thing to behold, because I didn't think we could do it. I didn't think we were going to move fast enough to see it in our lifetime. But I think
but Kenny, let me ask both you guys, because doesn't it seem like the power companies would sort of be at the center of that? I know with the residential, right, with the thermostats and all, and even with some of the buildings. It's like, you can get different rates if they allow you to tap into your system and pull back on power consumption. But do you see those guys playing it all in this whole thing?
Yeah, very much. But before I go to that, I'd like to pick up on the synergy thing that Ken was talking about there. Kenny was talking about is, this. I think I'm calling it crossing the floor, I guess. But what the big thing I think that observation I've noticed is that this Internet of Things, we're all using the same tools. We're all basically doing the same thing, coming to the same conclusions, and all of a sudden we've discovered that, oh, you're using IoT that way. We've never used it that way, but maybe we should. And they're looking at some of the stuff we've been doing for years, because in some ways we have a history of using IoT longer than some of these other people. So basically, we're all talking the same language, and so all of a sudden, some of the IoT terms are becoming the common ground that is allowing us to talk. And then back to the utility companies. Yeah, the utility companies are under radical change and under radical pressure to change. One of the big ones is if they take the climate climate emergency challenge, I guess, that they're actually going to have to make radical changes as to their energy sources. The whole other side, microgrids are back on the table again. Gridwise is back focused. So it's just another complex piece of the smart city that has to occur, and it's another reason why our building designers and stuff have to understand what's going on in the particular smart city they're working with their buildings.
For sure. Well, I thought that, again, great article, great collection. That you had that combination from several sources, John Petsy, Scott, you. But what I like is to make people like that emergency energy thing in New York, especially. I was talking to a pretty bright guy from Siemens, and he says it's not going to happen because it's such a gangly thing. But if our government, Department of Energy, puts out what they call when they start handing out citations, and you have to have energy disclosures, and you have to comply with audit mandates or be fined. Now we're seeing some teeth come into the program where you're going to have to, you can't pass the cost to your tenants anymore. You, as the owner of the building, are going to be, individually, specifically accountable for your energy, and you need to get the visibility and present that. And there's the new initiative that you put there was the BEADS. It was the Building Energy Data Exchange Specification. So that's kind of cool. So if you see that as the overarching, pressure to comply, and then we're pushing inside the building out, and we're starting to comply and do what you said, get a better occupant experience. But at the same time, the data that's there just needs to find its way to the right people. And so we got to put those networks in there. Would you call it the glass backbone or whatever?
Fiber in the building. Yeah, I think so. The other example we can take a look at, if you're coming at it from a regulation point of view, is Australia, of course, has a tremendous amount of lead in our building, especially the energy reporting area with people like Switch Automation and several other folks coming to North America and doing extremely well because they've actually been at this, and that's the reason they have is their government has legislated I think as much as 5 years ago, that you have to keep track of your energy, you have to report it, and so this is just business as usual for them. But anyway, I think the big thing is it's a change. Whether some of these programs are going to succeed or fail, I'm not so sure that's so important. It's just that it's bringing it out and making it a big item kind of thing that we all have to kind of deal with. And there's so many things. It's not just like the energy is just one. There's this whole mobile standard of how we're going to communicate. The fact that they see necessary to know where every one of these dockless scooters is in town, and why shouldn't we know where the energy building is? The other thing I'm just playing with now is the whole work sharing piece. Is that the nature of our buildings is radically changing, where a whole bunch of people in a company used to go to a building now a whole bunch of people in several companies go to a building and, the WeWork type model, and they're basically sharing the workspace. Once we start sharing the workspace, is that much different than sharing a scooter, sharing a car, sharing an Uber, the whole thing. We start using the same tools. We basically use Google Maps to find the place. We basically have a system of pulling information. We hold our phone up against the car window. The car recognizes us, opens up, and allows us access and starts charging us by the minute. And all of these things are now on the street. So they're not pies in the sky. That's when you go into meetings. I mean, there's, why don't we do it like this? And it's like, oh, yeah, why don't we? And then that would fit. And the fact that the cities are actually coming up with mobile standards. I think LA has been one of the leaders in that area. Yeah, interesting stuff, interesting times. The old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times.
Well, and one thing is kind of interesting to me, and I think Georgia Power, the Southern Company, would totally deny this. But, there used to be a lot of incentives to save energy, and those have gone away. And the general theory amongst people on the street is, well, they've got to make money. They're a utility. They've got power. They got to sell the power. So at least in the Southeast, it doesn't seem like they're really incentivizing people to save energy. So, there's that whole monetary piece that gets involved, right? And Ken, are you saying that up your way, or are they incentivizing people to save?
It's certainly a quandary. Yeah, you have opposing goals. On one hand, we have over an abundance of energy here in the Northeast. We send a lot of our power energy west and north, but you're right. It's so the government has to play a role. The people that invest in these utilities expect the return on their investment. So we got to keep working the algorithms, and we got to keep working the variables so that we accomplish both. Give people an incentive to invest in them,
right.
But I think energy companies are not trying very hard now to save energy. You're right.
Well, and I guess my curiosity, I kind of sort of tongue in cheek mentioned Germany, earlier on, Kenny, because you lived in Germany for a while, and it seems like on a country level, it's you've got to save energy. And Ken Sinclair, I'd ask you, in Canada, is it more of a local initiative, or is your government pushing it down from the top down, saying we're going to be more energy efficient? How's it work in Canada? And Kenny, how did it work in Germany?
Go ahead, Otto.
Yeah, well, Canada's fairly simple in the fact that they like to say they've deregulated, but they actually never ever did deregulate. And so in the final analysis, we basically have one large utility company per province. So, so that we still are fairly controlled there. They operate as in companies, but in fact they're closely tied to government. But that being said, the thrust that is now coming is coming from the cities, and I think that's the same thing in the U.S. And so what we're seeing is that the lead that we used to expect from the utility company is now coming from the city, and it's a bigger picture. It has to do with programs to have people not bother driving to work, to basically work locally. Actually, I just saw some stuff out of Atlanta. Atlanta's got some pretty neat stuff. They've got a G5 experimental project, which I mentioned in one of my articles. And so there's some neat stuff going on. So I think what I'm seeing is that the utility companies are almost being circumvented, and the effort is coming from people wanting to have a smart city, and they want their city to be smarter and greener than everybody else's city, and they're willing to invest in that. So that's why I'm saying that I think when you start to work some of this stuff out, you have to ask what cities it's in and what is their mandate. And we're actually seeing regulations coming out of the cities, like Vancouver is saying we're off of carbon, and they're basically switching oil, or mostly it's natural gas fired domestic hot water heating to electric. Here we have the unusual situation that we have pretty much all our electricity is generated from hydro in BC, so it's fairly clean energy to start with. So we have a situation that we can get the carbon free probably quicker than some.
Right. Well, here's your old company that you used to work for, Johnson Controls, and Kenny and I sort of had a theory that maybe, with their battery technology and all, that they could set up a system, with the stuff that Tesla's doing with the battery and the cars and so on and so forth. That it seems like the battery technology is really getting updated. Do you ever foresee the day that maybe the buildings would just run on batteries?
Yeah, basically the net zero concept I think is leading us that way, and yes, I think the way it'll probably work is that the grid is probably bottomed out. The electrical grid, in my mind, it doesn't need to get any bigger than it is. Basically, it just needs to be used better than it is, because what we have is we use it about 50% of the time, and if we used it 100% of the time and stored energy at night in batteries and cars, and then it would be a lot more efficient, and we don't have to rebuild that grid again. So I think what you're starting to see, and we're starting to see up in some of the new developments, is that the grid is either there or not, greatly reduced in the fact that the homes are all solar and sort of net zero kind of approach. So anyway, that kind of is definitely happening.
Yeah, I would agree
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. Mm-hmm.
No, I was just
Well,
going to
Eric,
say, I was, to your point, Ken, I'll let you get real quick. But so now you are the executive, the CEO of a utility company, and given all this move to net zero and so on and so forth. So what's your strategy then if you are an the CEO of a utility company expected to make profits?
It's a quandary.
Business as usual, time of day billing. They'll just
raise the rates, right?
They'll have and they'll have the incentive that they'll have. I think what you missed it. They'll be selling twice as much power as they were before, because they'll now be selling power at night to charge batteries that they're not doing now. They got the whole electrical car thing coming at them. They're going to be scrambling to come up with just totally enough energy to get in the grid.
No, that's interesting. So what you're saying is if they do it at night where there's less of a load, they don't have to build any more power plants or whatever for the peak. So your saving just comes that you don't have to build more grids. You're still going to be using the same or more electricity, but it's just going to be distributed at different times. So what's the net benefit to us is in the environment?
That's right. And plus they can still make their profits, and they're totally in control of that. The only thing is now I think they'll, especially in the U.S., you'll see, other companies starting to come up and challenge them, especially on big accounts and stuff. We'll start to see more cogeneration. We'll start to see more, solutions provided by complexes, and some of it will be driven by not just energy economics. It'll be driven by they want to be the greenest city, they want to be part of the green city. They want to reduce carbon. That's another thing that's kind of on the plate.
Well, there's several things going on in the conversation here. One is that I agree with Ken and I agree with you, Eric. We would think that the problem of changing AC to DC and back and forth and all that, duplicity and wasted power within a building to get the computers turned on. So you're going to see PoE, you're going to see batteries being a bigger part of how power is distributed in the building. And I think Johnson's well on its way. And if you keep on touch with their progress, you're going to see how that technology is being deployed. But going back to Europe and everything, I remember I was very impressed the first time I went to Europe and saw how efficient everything was. Not just Germany, but Italy, France, England. I mean, they don't have any surplus, and you charge a premium for anything wasted. The refrigerators was much smaller. Everything was just what you needed, not the advantage of having oversized. Like our step is to have a little bit more than you need. It's just a normal thing. But there, everything was efficient. But and again, I think Ken mentioned it or whatever. When you have a socialized form of government where you don't take people's opinions, you dictate how you're going to do it. This is how we're going to do things on Monday. We're going to start charging this much, and this is what you're going to do. And don't forget that that's how Germany and most of Europe is. They don't have a lot of the go-betweens of business and the parlays that go on between the different states have their own ways of doing each one of them. And so I found that was very amazing. Like when Germany unified, East and West Germany came together, we were charged reunification, additional charge was taken out of our, cost was taken. It was like a tax taken out of our pay to pay for that reunification. So when you have that kind of control over your national borders, you're going to have much greater progress. You're going to have greater economies of scale. You're going to have just a better advantage for that point. Now, again, that's stay away from the political and all the other social implications. But that's the same thing going on with China. They have an unfair advantage in the fact that when they deploy something, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. It's a prism. Some people see that as an advantage. Some people see it as an incredible disadvantage. But when you have control over all 50 states at one time and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and everybody's going to do it whether you like it or not, that's a different scheme than what we have in existence today.
Yeah, I think we're kind of coming to that conclusion too, that democracy is our greatest fear right at this moment, because we have basically all the people who have had a free life and haven't had to sacrifice anything, and they're not about to sacrifice anything, and they're just going to keep on going until they can't go anymore. They don't want to get involved. So it's an interesting scenario. We need a benevolent dictatorship. I think is what's sort of happening in the world.
And energies
times for sure.
Yeah, well, I think Ken, I vote for Ken Smyers. I think he'd be a great benevolent dictator, Kenny. So if you're up for the role, Otto, and I'll start pushing you.
I think Ken St. Clair would actually be much better suited.
Well, no, I think he could be your minister of information and coolness. But let's shift gears a little bit, fellas, because Ken, you started to talk a little bit about the autonomous vehicle, and talk about autonomous vehicle and the effect that's having on smart building controls, and what our integrators need to know about it and how it might affect them.
Well, I think what's happening is just the whole new car. You jump into a new car or rental car, and you pair your phone with it, and just the whole interface the automotive industry has done is probably a lot better than we've done in the buildings. And I think we need to kind of take a look at some of the stuff they're doing, how they build into the phone, how they basically add our personality to these vehicles. I think we need to add our personality to the buildings as easy as they do. So that's one observation. Another observation is their ability to get us information. As we sit in the seat, they basically can bring us as you move into any of the electric cars now, you start to see all this flow of information, how much power you're using, how much range you've got. All of that is at your fingertips, and it's done simply. I think we need to understand that once the masses understand how these systems work, whether they're right or wrong, I think we have to bring more and more of that kind of thinking into the buildings. And what I'm calling that is the autonomous. What's happening in autonomous cars needs to happen in autonomous buildings, because we're starting to see lane control. You go out of the lane, drags you back into the lane, puts off an alarm. The amount of sensors that are in a car is just totally amazing these days. I mean, basically you got forward-facing cameras, backward-facing cameras, things that switch your lights on and off, all of this. Basically you're inside of this automatic bubble, and I think they've done a lot of better interface than we have. So I'm just saying, let's take a look at what these people are doing. They're spending millions of dollars interfacing this stuff, and as soon as they do it, come up with features, they touch all of us. So we need to take a look at some of those features and how could we reconfigure them for buildings. So anyway, that's what I'm kind of calling the autonomous building. Is you walk into the building pairs with your phone and starts playing your music as you walk by. It starts, whatever it identifies. Oh, the big thing would be navigation. You walk into the building, it switches. You drive in, you're coming in, you're using Google Maps to find this new building you've never been to. It needs to be seamless when you come into the building. That location services starts up, and you just walk into the building, and now all of a sudden, okay, I've got to go to the 15th floor, and here's the office. Here's the map. I've got to use elevator 6, the high-rise elevators. All of that information. The navigation has to just continue on. It has to be seamless. Smart city, smart building, seamless interface. That's the way I see it.
Well, I agree with you. And Eric and I had the opportunity to see a building that was probably the smartest building I've seen to date, where the sensors and the GPS inside the building, or the positioning sensors were in the ceiling. So, and it was right down the middle of the hallway, and in every room there was like a perimeter. So it did everything for thermal imaging. It was also the voice control. Turn the music on, turn the lights, whatever. But I think that the theory, in order to for me to understand things. And I think we might have hit it, is you look at every smart building, smart city, but it begins with the smart room, the smart zone. So the individual room controllers, the total room automation, the unified integration. So you build it out from each zone into the building, so floor by floor, because a lot of our problems are that we don't have new opportunities. We have to retrofit this IoT thing back into it, and that's a big problem. Trying to explain to people why they need to start making investments. Why is investment? So if you're the building facility manager and you're trying to do the best you can, you need a map, a road map of where we go with the first $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, and it has to go into, I believe, the zone concept all the way from the smart zone, smart floor, smart building into the smart city.
That's great. Well said. And I'm smiling because I was just thinking, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there's 5 engineers standing around arguing about what the size of the chiller's going to be, and this wonderful central system they're defining. And now the focus is on the individual and what systems can he touch and how will he interface with them and how will he speak. So it's such a mind shift from that monstrous central mechanical room. And will that monstrous mechanical room appear, or will we in fact have little unitary systems that are surround us, and will our environment start to look more like the cars? Will we have seat heaters? God, I'm hoping so. I love my seat heater. So in the office, I would love to have that particular function, and a whole bunch of other things that we've kind of seen come from that. So you just said exactly what the point is it's divine. It's we're starting to design from the occupant back into the buildings, rather than where we did before. Is it we were all standing around looking at that $1 million chiller and oohing and ahhing kind of thing. So
no, great point.
Different mindset.
Yeah, but the mindset, I mean, do you guys ever see that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise? It was about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Remember, he would walk into a mall and it would greet him, and then the signs would be there, a discount for this or you on it, which is, I mean, that stuff's happening now. But guys, I tell you what, I'm so encouraged by all this, because what you're saying, Ken, Otto Sinclair, is when all this comes to be, there is going to be jobs for the 3 wise ones, the 3 wise old ones, which is nobody's going to know how to read a map. So if the grid goes down, they'll be seeking us out to figure out how to get things, get places. Yanni, I don't know about you, and Aldo, you're probably the same way, but when I was on the road, I mean, before any of this stuff, you could drop me in any city, and within 30 minutes, I knew where the school board was, where the hospital was. I could just figure it out, right? And I had a good sense of direction. My lovely wife, who has never read a map in her life, I mean, if she didn't have Google Maps, she doesn't even know how to think about where to go. She's dead in the water. So, guys, the great news is we're going to be the wise sages, the keepers of the maps, right? So,
well, you say that.
The joke is that a bunch of Zillennials have to watch a YouTube to unscrew a light bulb. So,
yeah, exactly. Well, the funniest thing that you said that, Eric, about the city, I was having trouble getting to an engineer's office, and it was somewhere in Ohio. I forget. I don't know. Anyhow, I was really frustrated. And that was back. Remember, you print out MapQuest. You had like 8 pages, and then half of it would be advertisement and gobbledygook, and then that would be make a left, go 2 miles, make a right, whatever. So I said, he said, well, we're on the north side of town, and I said, well, I don't know. I'm in the middle of the city. I can't see beyond the buildings. I'm like framed in with And he goes, find the sun, and then you'll know where north is. Okay, so. But I mean, he gave me the reference point. It was the sun, east, west, and I'll never forget that as long as I live, because I was a little bit embarrassed, but I just totally lost the ability to relate to where I was because I was shut inside of these buildings. And then when I finally drove out into the area where I could see the sun was in the east, and then from there I
Right.
figured out where north was. So anyhow.
But listen, guys. Here's how things have changed so radically. Okay, because my first couple of wives, because I'm a guy, and it would be we get lost and go, why don't you stop and ask someone for directions? And they go, there's no way I'm asking anyone for directions. I'll figure this out. Right? I was really stubborn with that. With my current wife, it's why don't you ask Google Maps for direction? I go, hell no, I'll figure it out. Right? So there you go. This is how technology has changed marital things. So
Yeah.
all right,
But
so
Eric,
Ken, go ahead.
You bring
Ken.
a very good point, though, and again, that's Paul Oswald in the conversation or in the room. Remember some of Ken's things up at AHR. Everybody's talking about these magnificent cloud-based whatevers, and how we're making people's occupant experience. And he goes, fix the belts. In other words, we can't ever lose the fact that you could have a down day, a bad net day. Like I got bad reception here. We got very overcast. It's raining like heck, and it's just a gray day out there. And then I think it's affecting my bandwidth on my service. But what do you do if you lose power? It's not always a perfect world. We lost power last year 3 times. We had this ice storm, and everything turned into these giant ice cubes and pulled down the tree branches and the utility lines. I think you got to have always that person in the crowd that's looking for that the day that we're going to have where some possible weather phenomenon or something's going to happen where you still got to make every single thing work at that lowest level or at the building level or at the chiller level. So it's just again it's that always has to be in the conversation, but sometimes we don't. We assume everything's going to be a perfect internet day.
Well, I think all this we're talking about is enhancements, and I think again, let's go back to the autonomous car. My new auto will not be auto for automatic. It'll be auto for auto cars. But anyway, it's the same thing with the car. There's still hydraulic brakes that stop the car, although the self-braking system actually automatically puts those brakes on. And that's kind of the same thing we're heading towards in the buildings, is we've got all of this sophisticated stuff that is going to do incredible things. If it's not there, you still got to put your foot on the brake. And I think the building is exactly that. The chiller still has to be there. The boilers still has to be there. It still has to operate. You still have to fix the belts. So our industry, in a lot of ways, for some folks, it's not going to change one iota, except the only thing is they're going to be the demand for them to fix things is going to be greater, because as soon as it's broken, there's a big blurb on somebody's screen and 10 people's phones light up. And before, this guy used to go 6 months trying to get a requisition to get new belts. now he can and he can basically just throw one of them off, and immediately the CEO, the CFO, everybody is saying, "Hey, we got belts off. Let's get these belts on." And so the communication has been greatly reduced. So
efficiency should be much better, right, Ken? So,
yeah. So the bottom line is we're still doing those same things.
Right.
That's not really changed much.
Right.
It's just the focus. But I think what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to provide some education as to some of the shifts and changes that are going on, so that when people walk into a meeting, they're not caught flat-footed when all of a sudden there's a city piece that's going to completely replace the piece that they've been designing for the last 4 years or something, and they think it's going to happen in building automation. I think that's what we're starting to see. Is it's just like, we're working away here, they're working over there. They've got the scale of the numbers, and so their stuff is working. Also, they've got 2 million, 500,000, 10 million people who understand how that technology works. We're trying to build some technology over here that nobody understands. We're never going to be able to convince 10 million people that that's the right way of doing it. But if Netflix does it that way, or whoever, then we all understand how that works. It's an amazing stuff that we've learned what to do with our phones and Google Maps and Uber and all those things.
And Otto, one of the things I've got to say, and for our audience out there, I think what's really important is, you have to think bigger, more encompassing. And, this might never directly affect you, but if you're going to be part of a bigger conversation, you at least have to know the parameters of the conversation. And Ken, what I think you do a great job of is constantly looking forward to see how our world's going to encompass more. And then from that, I think it makes it easier to play in it. But if you don't know what they're talking about with the smart city, if you don't understand what they're trying to accomplish, you can't play in that arena. But listen, Ken, I want to wrap up October. If there's anything else you want to talk about October, then I want to transition to November, because you got the November issue coming out, and then I want to take a few minutes and talk about AHR. So anything else you want to complete with the October issue? It's online at automatedbuildings.com.
Okay. Well, I noticed, I just went on your site and I noticed you guys are still hawking the September issue. So yeah,
that's our favorite issue. So
yeah. so we could get updated to the October. That would be great.
We'll do that.
Then, no, Ken, that's in case you missed it. We have your October one there too. In fact, the October. I did miss it. Okay, the October edition. It was posted on. But I'm just saying, what happens is Eric has this on the website right now. Your September edition came into, in case you missed it. So it's up on the right hand side. But if you go into, we posted it on October 3rd. October, Automated Buildings October theme, builder user connection and smart city.
Okay, no, I'm just looking at it right. Anyway,
we got it. In fact, it was in the featured, and then we moved it into. So if you go down to the bottom, if you go onto the main page and go scroll down, maybe 6 posts, you'll see the October edition.
Anyway, okay. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay.
We're giving we like it so much, Ken. We just put it up more than once for you, buddy.
There you go. Okay. There you go. I thought that. Oh, they're still back in September. Anyway, good stuff. Okay, that was good. Thank you. I do appreciate that. By the way, that's why I'm politicking for it. Is it's always gets a lot of a good things. Actually, that's just a by the by that is worth mentioning. I think is what I've been doing is I've been taking a lot of our articles and just simply posting the article on LinkedIn. And I'm totally amazed at the amount of discussion that breaks out and the amount of views. Like we're getting up, some of them like 4 and 5 and 6,000 views and 30, 40 people chiming in. And it's much more effective than Automated Buildings actually is a whole LinkedIn connection kind of thing. And we've got about over 16,000 folks now poking around that are following what we're doing there. So I think we're starting to understand the power of social media. And again, the point Ken made is that people are now interested in what large buildings are doing. How do you guys actually work? Before, you'd start talking about what you do and people would glaze over and they didn't want to talk to you. But now they actually want to talk to you. They're actually interested in how do you guys really control that stuff? I never thought about it, these big buildings and how do you interface with them? And so interesting stuff. Anyway, back to what we want to talk about. So our November issue, we're starting to put together, and we're theming it sharing data, workspace, interaction, and integration. Where I'm going with that is the very fabric of our buildings are starting to change. These buildings are starting to be mobile workspaces, and as they become mobile workspaces, again, that looks an awful lot more like autonomous car kind of thinking, and we need to reconfigure this space. We need to get this data out. We need to be able to help sell the space with what kind of controls. Ken did a great job of that, talking about us doing our design, basically sitting in our chair or on our ball or on our trapeze or ever what the vehicle we're going to sit on in our office. And basically now we look out, first thing we want is a screen, first thing we want is audio, all of these things. How do we interface with them? It's a whole different kind of thought process, how we're going to put that together. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and start opening up and do some connections to some of the stuff that's going on in other areas. The other one is we've got 12 sessions at AHR in Orlando. It's a record for us by a long shot. And we're part of 81 free sessions. So you can see the whole education thing is something everybody's interested in. We're all trying to be heard. It should be fun. I'm looking forward. We've got some great programs where we've got our next generation HVAC controls, an open discussion for an open future. We've got the my young contributing editors back again. You guys did such an amazing job of capturing that last year. In fact, that's actually linked to my last article. Your last year basically video is linked to that because it's so significant, because basically Brad for this new article basically started quoting well, we came to that conclusion in Atlanta when we were at our next generation open session. So some of this stuff is starting to get repeated, starting to get accepted. The trouble is when you're trying to do stuff for the first time, you never know whether you're completely wrong or maybe right, until some people start saying it back to you, and it starts a year. Some of the stuff I go back 20 years ago, and when I said it 20 years ago, I wasn't so sure. But if I'm still referring to it now, 20 years ago, then must have been almost right.
No, I think Eric always says you're a seer or you got a crystal ball or whatever, but I think the time that we have been able to spend with you and be a part of your programming has been remarkably beneficial. I think not only did you say it was going to happen, and a couple of years later, everybody started moving at the sweet spot, moved over to there. The whole idea of the comfort, like the comfy thing. And how many years ago was that, Eric, when we first discovered Comfy and with
6 or 7,
Lindsay Baker?
wasn't it? Yeah, Lindsay Baker.
And now to see it so automatically as common terms. Everybody's talking about, the occupant experience, how that went from a satellite way out there that would come across the horizon every once in a while to being the main topic of when you're trying to sell a system or present a system. It's the user interface, it's the occupant experience as the first lines of how you're going to, remember Scott Cochran said, make every building safer, more secure, more energy efficient, and improve the occupant experience. It is part of the main staple, where before we were feeding these guys, what'd you call those thermostats that didn't, plebiscite?
Plebistats, yeah. Plebistats.
Oh my gosh. I mean, so think of how that's come around. So I think you had, you gave the precursors to a lot of that technology when it was way out there, in the circling, the orbits, but it wasn't really mainstay. You brought those things into the, I think, into focus first, many of them. Wouldn't you agree, Eric?
I would completely agree with that. And, now when Ken, when you first started talking about, the emotional relationship with the building and making it more democratic and all. I mean, at first, I think people didn't think that was going to be the case, but now, Kenny and I have evidence of this. When we went to this building in Washington that we videoed and put up, I mean, it was clear. I mean, one of the things that impressed me most about that, Kenny, was, they're showing everybody, the press, the thing, but they've got their tenants in there. The tenants in the building were actually part of this. So, who would have thought that going from plebiscite, let's manipulate you and trick you, to now we're going to give you control. And, Ken, you were all about that, our Canadian brother.
Yeah.
Well, the big thing there is that we found a new source of revenue to sell our wares. I mean, that was all back, if you remember, that all came out of the 300
330, 300, yeah.
Yeah, 33, 300 kind of thing. And we were playing around with the $3 one as soon as we crossed the floor and started getting into this human productivity and how that's very important, and the financial money that brought with us. Actually, in our next month's thing, we're going to talk a little bit about that, is the return on investment. And the return on investment now is, can we get people into our building? Can we I'm even talking about the situation that once you start moving into this mobile workspace, you actually start bidding on your own space. If you put it out there that I have available 10,000 feet on this floor in downtown Cleveland or wherever it is, then somebody wants it more than my people, I will actually sell it to them and go buy floor space for my own people somewhere else, because maybe they need it downtown. I don't really need it downtown. I just need floor space. So this whole market side of it, we're really moving quite into a complete different arena, and we have to shake our heads because we were so focused on saving energy that's not the big issue. The big issue is basically getting the people in the building, keeping the people happy, keeping them productive.
Well,
And the kids, we used to come in and we were really glad to have a job, so we'd sit in the corner quiet. But these kids, it's like, man, if this isn't comfortable, I'm going back to mom's basement. So.
Yeah. Well, just to that point, the very first time I heard the 300 principle and a lot of stuff was at the AHR shows, your breakout sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And then going back to the context with Therese Sullivan, the first time I heard that was Therese's version. And then the collaboration, I think that's what it was. The difficult word to say, the collaboratorium. Or whatever.
Yeah, collaboratorium. Actually, the other one is of course to that 300. They've actually added 3,000. JLL has added that, and like some of this is basically the reason they're starting to use the building as the carrot to attract talent. And for some of these software companies, that's everything to them. Sure. If they can get more gaming kids than the other guy, then they're going to win. And the other thing that came out of that is there are people in the building that are worth anything. I mean, we will move the building as they move through it because they are the companies and stuff. So the
sure.
The people who are the key folks in these software companies, give them anything they want.
Right.
And better people.
So listen, as we wrap this
them. So we're getting into a whole new revenue stream. And I think, sorry.
We're having a little bit of connectivity problems here, but listen, as we wrap this up, I will say the best investment opportunity of the decade is going to be, first there was Webster's Dictionary. Now there's Otto Sinclair's Smart Building Controls Dictionary, because you've coined so many phrases, Ken. So, I think, we define our realities by the words we're able to use, and you've come up with some great words. But listen, automatedbuildings.com. Ken, can't tell you how much we appreciate you being on the show. We'll get you back in November, maybe the middle part of November, maybe the first part. But anything you want to say to the audience before we hop off?
No, Ken, you wanted to mention something about the Cortec.
Oh yeah,
you're traveling. You're on the road. Yeah.
Yeah. In mid-November, I'm off to San Jose, and it's Cortec. It's put on by the Realcomm people. They do a great job. It's more the actual users of this, and what I'm finding, I think you guys found this too at Realcomm in Nashville. I was blown away by what the people were doing. You guys say you're always thinking I'm talking about space age stuff that you've never heard of. What I found was people were actually doing a whole bunch of stuff I'd never heard of, and that's one of my main reasons for going. Is there's some very progressive building owners, and of course I'm always intrigued to see what the software campuses are doing. I find that a very interesting innovation site for me, is to actually go and see what is Google doing. How is Google basically moving their workspace into all of the things they're doing in software. So they actually have their own testing ground, so they can actually try some of this stuff. Yeah, that doesn't work. And they're quick to change too. So definitely a lot of this stuff that is evolving by the buildings. So we've got a big shift. We used to look to the utility companies to lead us in technology. Now we're looking to the cities, and we're also looking to the progressive building owners, and this whole in building wiring, wireless situation where we have the fiber backbone, and then we have in building wireless, and they're actually able to move to 5G like services quicker than the telephone companies, because the telephone companies, they have to have this thing done so they can change their whole system over to 5G. The building owner doesn't need to do that. If he has his own DAS, district antenna systems within the building, he can load up a feature on his building, and it's just inside of his building. So he has location services, so they can actually lead the cell companies. That's another thing we've never seen before. We've never seen innovation come from within the building. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here
That's real neat.
totally confusing me.
Well, listen, I want you to save that topic, because next time we have you on, I want to pick up on that one, because there's a lot of discussion that can go on around that. But again, Ken, you're looking into the future. You're bringing the future to us. Can't tell you how much we appreciate that. AutomatedBuildings.com. Ken, thank you for all you do for the industry, and thank you for coming on our show.
Thanks. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Back at you guys for all the things you do too, to hold this, to pull all of these pieces together. I'm always amazed at the breadth of the topics you cover as I look through the control trends, the other Control 10 talks that you're, and who you're talking to and what kinds of ideas they have. Good stuff.
Well, thank you very much, my friend. Well, Ken, as always, our friend Ken Sinclair, great insight. We could just talk to him for hours and hours and hours. And as a matter of fact, we typically do. I mean, it's like once the recorder gets going, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm fascinated. What a wealth of knowledge. How lucky we are in our industry to have guys like Ken Sinclair.
Well, he's like a professor. He's like, it's like going to, if there's such a thing as a professor emeritus of our industry, it would be Ken Sinclair, because he's got the experience. He was down in the trenches very early in his career. The thing he has is just kind of an intuition of what's important and what isn't. How we always say about the two-step distributor, having that filtering, the work of finding out what technology meets the solution, or how do you save your customers time floundering through all this stuff to look at and what's really meaningful. Well, I think Ken does that as an industry. He's been the first. He knew that things were coming, and they would gain importance, and one day I'll become, like he said, inside out. Our building went inside out, where you first looked at the big piece of equipment and were fascinated at how much it could do and the performance and how many zones it could support. And now it's been inversely related, that now you sit in a chair and you think of the walls around you and how to make that a more comfortable occupant.
And what blows me away, Kenny, is that, I think Control Trend's been on like 10 years now, and I think we've been interviewing Ken Sinclair for 6 or 7 of them, right? And he's been kind of a regular contributor. And what blows me away is how right he has been about things. I mean, he'll come out with some of this stuff and say it, and you and I'll go, I don't know, dude, I don't see that. And people go, yeah, he's crazy. That's not going to happen. But then it does. So, I mean, he's somebody that is a gift to the industry, in my opinion. He's somebody you want to pay attention. If you want to know what's coming, you want to be listening to him. And AutomatedBuildings.com, to me, is just one of the great publications in our industry. So
I so agree.
All right, buddy. Well, listen, it sounds like maybe my kids are starting to strangle each other, and so we might have to just call it a day right here and there. So with that, a special thanks to our guest, Ken Sinclair from AutomatedBuildings.com. Come here, you little rugrats. Oh, my gosh. The diapers are off. There's a free-for-all in there. So so let me do that one more time. Special thanks to our guest, Ken Sinclair from AutomatedBuildings.com. Be sure to check it out. And to your host and mind, the math myth, the legend, Kenny Smyers. Remember, be bold, stay in control, be relevant, and make sure you got your diaper on.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smyers. All right. That's the show right there.